Here we go. Hey, Peter.
Hey.
What?
Huh?
Sorry.
Huh?
What'd you say?
You talking to me?
Excuse me?
You talking to me?
What?
Listen.
I'm Adam Maness.
And I'm Peter
And
Martin.
you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
A podcast where we attempt to explain jazz, or as I say, jazz explained.
Wow, that was not a truncated title. That was what's the opposite of truncated? X-graded?
Extrapolated.
Extrapolated.
Something like that.
Yeah, you extrapolated the hell out of that tagline.
Yeah. We're having trouble getting this episode out today.
Well, some episodes are easier than others, man. We don't sweat
Once we get this far into it, it's kind of like, is this going to be the one? Well, I guess if people are hearing it, this is the one.
This is the one. If you're listening to this and actually we've made it through, then this is the one for sure.
I know folks think that we are geniuses of the pod, which we are. No, because we do this unscripted and improvisationally.
You don't say.
But sometimes we do multiple takes, okay? So you might have... That's all I have to say, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
sometimes we do multiple takes of the pod because we care about the dear listeners. And so a little bit of a behind-the-scenes thing is sometimes one of us, usually me, will be 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes into it.
It's pretty evenly balanced,
is it?
The false starts, yeah.
Lacely, but is it a false start if we're 7 minutes into the podcast?
No, that's just a do-over, a complete do-over. Yeah.
Sometimes we'll get deep into it, and I'll call it off. And then Adam will look at me bitterly and be like, why? Fine, sir.
Speaking of multiple takes, did you know that when you go to you'llhearit.com and you leave us a message, a speak pipe, you can take multiple takes. You don't have to just record one and then send it. You can do one, and if you don't like it, you can redo it.
But why would somebody go there in the first place?
Well, if they wanted to ask us a question, I'm kind of wondering if John, who asked us today's question, did multiple takes, or if this was the first one. John, let us know. Here's John.
Hey, Peter and Adam. This is John from California. I wanted to ask you guys about playing what you hear. We all hear pianists that sometimes hum along to the melody that they're playing when they're playing a solo, or they'll sing along to it. And it's pretty clear that at least sometimes they're playing melodies that they're hearing in their head versus, a lot of other times or other pianists, they just maybe not necessarily running their fingers, but they're playing shapes or patterns that they know are going to sound good, but they don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to sound like when they play it. So is this playing melodies that you hear in your head, is that something that's important to you guys? Is this something that you practice? And if so, how do you do that? So thanks a lot. Love the podcast.
It's a good question, John.
Yeah.
I actually think, Peter, I don't know what you think about this, but I think at a certain level, pianists who are at a very high level, in a certain way, are hearing everything they're playing.
Yes.
And whether it's pattern-based or not, you know how it's going to sound.
Yeah.
I know for me, like if I try to, it's really hard to think about what you're hearing in your head after the fact. But for me, if I'm really in the flow and I'm in the moment, I'm hearing everything, including what's ever in the room with me, including whatever the drummer's playing, whatever the bass player's playing.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm playing, whatever comes to me, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no, it's non-dual. It's like, it's all coming from the same place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that play what you hear is such a, potentially esoteric kind of a concept. And I think it shouldn't cause anybody, any players, any kind of like consternation in terms of like, am I actually playing what I hear?
It's a $5 word.
Sorry. I've been reading the New York Times a lot lately. I have a subscription. I'll give you the link. Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's like, you shouldn't be like, wait, am I actually playing what you hear? Because I think, to your point of what you just said, once you're doing it, you'll know it. And it doesn't matter. It's never going to be like 100% or 0%. I think that if you're getting to a good percentage, it will increase because it's the kind of thing that works. It feels good. It sounds good. And both in terms of your playing and how it sounds on the bandstand, and I think ultimately to the listeners. And it's such a integral part of this sort of improvisational spirit of the music that really, when done correctly, of course, combined with all the elements, though, not just like, a lot of times we think play what you hear is only a melodic thing, but it's very much a rhythmic thing. It's very much a harmonic thing. So I think for a lot of folks, the entry point can be on the rhythmic side, because that can be the, I don't want to say the easiest part of ear training, but kind of the simplest and most obvious entry point.
Or even just hearing the flow of the, like the shape of the melody. Like you can, you can do a pattern like, right? And maybe you're not hearing every single pitch, but you're hearing like ba-ba-do-dub.
Right.
You know?
The phrasing, the
Right.
rhythm, how it lays into the groove. Absolutely.
Totally.
And I think that that's all kind of upping that percentage. So yes, in terms of like, is it important to play what you hear? Absolutely. So the reason we work, and how do we work on it? That's ear training. You know, that's really the essence of ear training. So we're not necessarily working on it in that, okay, I'm going to sit here for 5 minutes and only play what I hear. I'm going to work on these specific ear training exercises and elements to my musicality so that when I practice improvising, which is really just any time that you're playing, whether you're practicing playing or playing on a gig, that you're going to be in the best position to kind of, you know, clear out your mind and just say, let me just be in the moment. Let me just be present.
Yeah.
Let me play what I hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All right, since John is from Cali, I'm going back to Cali.
Oh, boy.
Man, my 90s hip-hop references are off the chain.
I thought you were going to go California,
California, that's a good one too.
Beverly Hillbillies.
But I'm just thinking, like, have you ever been surfing before?
I've been wakeboarding.
Wakeboarding.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because we are landlocked here
Yeah,
in the middle of the
I'm
country.
from Missouri. So,
Of course.
yeah.
Well, I only went surfing once, but if you think about it like this, so of course I'm an expert. No, but if you think about like, you know, when you don't know what you're doing, you're out there paddling around, trying to find the wave and then trying to ride it. I think what we're talking about here in terms of like, which is fine. That's what you have to do when you start. And then you're like, wait, is it taking me? Is it not? At a certain point, you're surfing, but you don't even really know it. It's kind of like that with playing what you hear. The top level is kind of like being in that zone. You're just sitting there having a good time and then all of a sudden the wave comes and you're like getting up and you're riding that thing in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was not how I did it.
Yeah,
when I
no,
was in
you
Hawaii,
look very
just so you know.
confident.
But I saw other folks doing it like that. So I think if we think about that, knowing that you're not going to start there, but the ear training and then the practice, sort of the manifestation of that ear training into the improviser's mindset and kind of toolkit is applying that where you sort of take a breath and you're like, okay, I'm going to actually just play whatever I hear and then start to see like what's the percentage of that that's coming out. Like, okay, I hear something. It's okay that when you play it, you're like, wait, that's not quite what I heard. That's a good sign because that shows that you're actually starting. I mean, because we all have stuff that we hear. Even like a fan of the music, they can't play an instrument, hears some different melodies and voices in their head, as we would say.
But also, you know, think about what great improvisers teach us to do, right? What's the number one thing that they tell us to do for practice? It's to listen. Right? And that's so that you get the music into your head so that you have something to listen to as you're playing through the music. And then what's the number one thing they say to do when you're performing? Listen to what's going around you. And that's so you can, you know, be with what it is. You don't have a plan going in. It never works out when you plan out what you're going to play beforehand.
No.
I mean, it's a whole other part of your brain, actually.
Right.
It's the sort of like pre-written, pre-composed thing. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not what we do when we improvise. And so to do that, you have to really train yourself to be a really present listener who's there with the rest of your band, who's there with the audience. We were just talking to Gregory Hutchinson, and, you know, I mentioned like his big skill. I mean, of course, like he's got chops for days and swings and ideas and everything. But I think his greatest skill is listening. Yeah. As most great musicians' greatest skill is.
And we talked about how that's kind of missed in this age of like, breaking down like, oh my God, look at this incredible brush technique. Yeah. Oh, look at this press roll that he did. It's like, yeah, but what you have to really appreciate, that's one thing, and that's amazing. But like, you're not necessarily going to ever be able to do that like he does. Yeah. But you can be as present and listen, you know, but that really doesn't happen overnight. In fact, some of the technical stuff is so hard, but it's easier to get to that than to get to that ability to be able to like listen and react.
Push-ups and
that's
sit-ups.
a lifelong, that's like a lifelong thing.
Totally.
And it's so nuanced and so exciting.
And it's really where the best music comes from. There is no Kind of Blue. There's no Love Supreme. There's no entire Keith Jarrett catalog without deep listening.
Yeah. And even the solo piano. I mean, it's just as
totally.
One other thing with this that John from Cali mentioned, that I think we should address is, you know, this idea of like, if you're just playing patterns or shapes specifically at the piano, although you think about saxophone, you think about trumpet, you think
guitar.
about guitar for sure, shapes, these like that way of playing and kind of it's not even a way of playing, that way of interacting with your instrument and interacting with music does not need to be diametrically opposed to what we're talking about playing what you hear. Because yes, if you only play patterns and shapes that feel good and have no connection, you don't have a connection to how they sound, which would really be hard to do. You'd have to just stop listening.
Well, like I said, man, if you hear a shape of like ba-do-do-do,
and then you associate that with how it feels.
Yeah,
that's a powerful thing. Yeah.
Am I hearing and able to sing every individual pitch here? No. I'm singing along though because I'm able to hear what's
But did
about
you
to
hear
happen.
how, and hopefully folks check this out, the way what Adam just did, how he varied it up at a certain point because he was listening to the music of it.
Right.
What you can tell is when people are only attached to how something feels, like the sensory feeling of the instrument is when they're like, and nothing is ever altered.
Lock and
and
load,
it's just
shake
like a
and bake.
machine. Yeah, shake and bake, you know. Come on, baby, shake and bake. But I mean, Ricky Bobby up in here. But I think that, not to say that there might not be a place to just go straight force like that, but you got to make sure you're connected with the music when you do that. So there's nothing wrong with like shifting over and going in and out of these very technical sensory connections with your instrument. That's some exciting stuff, and we think about all of our favorites do that, and that's fun to do. But think about, how does it sound? How does it fit into? And that's where ear training really comes in.
Yeah, and speaking of ear training, if you want to be able to hear the things that are in your head and kind of translate them to your instrument a little more, at Open Studio, we do have a whole ear training course. It's called 5-Minute Ear Training. It's 30 sessions, so a month, every day, a month of sessions.
Yeah, great course.
And they're just 5 minutes long, and it literally starts out with, what interval is this?
Yep.
You know, that's the question. And then we go on to things like identify the triads, you know, things like that. 2, can you pick out cadences?
Yep.
And that kind of training, being able to hear root movements, being able to hear the quality of the chords, being able to hear shapes, all super important for getting the music that's in you out.
Yeah. And I mean, this type of ear training, the course is fantastic, and that's some of the best feedback we've had from any course in terms of like applying to the skills folks need for improvisation. You know, when you are talking about ear training, you want to go very, very basic. You want to go under where you think your level. A lot of people be like, oh, I know triads, I know the scales. No, you want to really dial that in, repetition.
They got to be
how it sounds, how it feels, upside down, and all those kind of things.
Yeah, it's got to be every time.
It can be one of the biggest door openers to your improvisational development for sure.
Totally. So we'll put a link here for that course.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Or become a member, then you get that and everything else.
Get everything else,
That's our dirty little secret.
Work on your rhythm, you want to work on your transcription. It's all there.
That's right. It's all good. Well, until next time.
You'll hear it.